My name is Sheyi, and I moved to Canada from Nigeria in 2018, and I absolutely love it here. However, I have heard a lot of people saying that it is no longer worth moving to Canada. And a lot of people are asking for my opinion on whether it is still worth moving to Canada or not. A lot of people. And as someone living the experience, I decided to do some digging of my own so I can answer the question, is it really worth moving to Canada this year or even anymore? That is what this video is all about. We will talk about the top 3 things about Canada that people are worried about that makes them wonder if Canada is even worth it. So buckle up, grab some coffee because video is a roller coaster as nobody is really talking about these 3 top things. When people are asked to choose what country they would love to move to, Canada is almost always at the top of the list with a reputation of being a safe, stable, prosperous nation with a strong economy and a well functioning government. On the surface, it seems like one of the few countries where you can finally breathe a sigh of relief to be living in, to make good money, be in a safe environment, and live a good quality of life. The almost perfect country, right? In our hearts, yes, but for most immigrants and even Canadians these days, this is far from reality. And in this video, we will discuss why it is like that and what to expect when and if you move to Canada. If you are new in Canada, you may have experienced this. Those who came to Canada like 10 years ago or even more keep telling us that the Canada that we are seeing now is not the same Canada that it used to be before. Have you ever experienced anybody telling you that? If you have, type yes in the comments now. The thing is, it is true. I came to Canada 6 years ago, and truly, Canada is different than what it was 6 years ago. Some for good, some, well, not so good. So, what's going on? Why is our darling Canada country not quite so darling anymore? And even more importantly, should you move to Canada or not? That is the million-dollar question. First, let's talk about some hard facts. There's rising cost of living in Canada, and with the rising cost of living in almost every city in Canada, some recent survey reveal that some Canadian residents are getting worried about not being able to even afford their everyday needs. Other data also confirms that among Canadian residents, the feelings of depression, anger, fear, and pessimism are rising by the day. The housing crisis in Canada is one of the top reasons why people are worried about moving to Canada. This housing shortage has been in the news a bit too much lately, and it is not surprising why that is. Even though there's also a housing crisis in much of the world just now, not just in Canada, but it seems like the Canada housing market today is the least affordable in the world. In the past 10 years, the value of an average Canadian home has more than doubled, with rent prices growing at a similar rate, which makes it hard for many people to afford a rental property in some cities, and even harder to actually buy a home in a place like Toronto or its environment. The average resident spends a large portion of their income on rent. And if you want to buy a property in a city like Vancouver, you need to be making at least $150,000 to even qualify for a mortgage. In other words, buying a property today in Canada is now a possibility only for people with high income. So I'm just wondering, like, why did housing become so insanely unaffordable that it even led to the Canadian government having to put a cap on the number of international students starting 2024? Something which has never happened in the history of Canada. Well, the truth is that there is a strong demand for housing as Canada has a quickly growing population due to the fact that it accepts 500,000 immigrants per year. So obviously, Canada needs more homes, which is obvious, right? But I'm wondering, how is it that a government that is inviting this number of immigrants every year did not strongly consider where all those people are going to live? So the problem is actually not international students or even immigrants. The real problem is that Canada is completely failing at building enough homes to house all these new people that it is inviting. But you might wonder, why not just build more houses, right? How hard can that be? Well, one thing that many people may not know is that the housing policies in Canada are controlled by local city governments, and they have been reluctant to allow construction of more homes, as this would depreciate the price of properties that are already there. The truth is that having fewer homes means that home prices keep going up, which is great for the homeowners who are also potential voters. And so local politicians are not addressing the issue to avoid upsetting their current constituents, even though it makes housing unaffordable for everyone else, on top of a constantly increasing population. So you find a lot of red tape from the local government when it comes to constructions. And this causes so much delays in actually starting these building projects. It's like a vicious cycle, and so surprising to me because I thought that these things only happen in certain countries, but it's happening right here in Canada. And it's one of the reasons why many people are not feeling the Canadian dream that much anymore. Apart from the housing nightmare, the second reason why people are worried about coming to Canada is the rising cost of living, which I talked about earlier. Truly, rising cost of living is not happening just in Canada. In fact, much of the world is going through different shades of a rising cost of living. But some people who came to Canada with high hopes feel that Canada's own is just too much. Canadian residents pay a lot for a number of common things like groceries, banking fees, cell phones, and gas, which are way more expensive than in the US, which is just next door. I am almost always amazed at how much comparatively cheaper the cost of goods are in the US. And many Canadians cross the border to go shopping in the US. I used to think about it a lot. Not only are these things cheaper in the US, they are bigger in size. And there's so much variety to choose from over there. So again, you might ask, why is that so? Why is that so? And I will tell you, these prices are a direct consequence of the fact that Canada, more than any other country, is dominated by monopolies and oligopolies. In other words, most Canadian industries are dominated by just one or a few giant companies. And this didn't happen by accident either, but instead, it is a result of a questionable strategy that has been adopted by many different Canadian governments. Canadian governments have adopted the monopoly and oligopoly strategy because of the fear that Canada's local companies might get pushed out of the market by their larger and more aggressive competition from the United States. And that is a legitimate worry, especially if you live right next door to the world's largest and most competitive economy. Being next to the US has made Canada a little too protective and convinced that the only way to prevent being overshadowed by the US companies is by helping Canadian companies to get as big as possible. And so while governments in most countries try to prevent companies from becoming too big, Canadian government generally tries to help them to achieve exactly that. And as a result, Canada's economy is made up of just a handful of giant corporations with almost zero competition. And you see this in every industry, from phone companies to companies that supply heat, companies that supply gas, all sorts of companies. But the problem is that these monopolies are not good for anyone except for themselves, because since they have absolutely no competition, they generally tend to hike the prices just because they can, and the consumers end up paying more, while the companies themselves become less competitive in the international market, since they have it so easy at home anyway, which is why you probably don't know a single Canadian corporation with a global success. And that's kind of a problem. To make matters worse, despite the growing cost of living, many Canadians are expecting that salaries would increase at the same or even higher rates, but that's not happening. So it is the same salary, chasing increasing costs of goods and services. The third top reason why people are worried whether it is still worth moving to Canada or not is jobs. So even though on paper, Canada is a very rich country. However, unlike most of the developed countries, there is not many available highly paid white-collar jobs. You know, the kind of jobs that college-educated middle-class workers would typically look for. Even though we hear a lot about labor shortages in Canada, the demand is mostly for blue collar and pink collar jobs. There are people in Canada claiming to have been here several months without a job. And though many people eventually find jobs, they usually haven't found the job of their dreams, especially the highly educated people. Sometimes people have to step back in their career or take jobs that are in areas outside their specialty, and this can really be depressing for many people. Lots of people who have built a really good career over several years back home wonder whether it is worth coming to Canada to start from a lower level, so to say. I know I promised to talk about the top 3 reasons, but I have one bonus reason why people may wonder whether Canada is even still worth it or not. And that one reason is public services. Canada actually has a reputation for having high quality and widely accessible public services, especially when compared with the United States. And this is one of the top reasons why many people choose Canada. Personally, I wanted free healthcare, free amenities, and public services that actually work. And even though I get majority of this in Canada, but a lot of people are still unsatisfied, especially with healthcare services. One survey showed that only 57% of Canadians think they would receive proper medical care in case of a sudden medical emergency, compared with 70% of Americans who were asked the same question. And well, they are right. There is an extreme short of medical workers, especially doctors, in Canadian hospitals. And this is despite the fact that Canada spends more on healthcare than any European country, while a lot of European countries outrank Canada in metrics like waiting times and number of hospital beds. As a whole, the Canadian healthcare system, which was once a pride of the country, is now seen as a problem by many Canadians. And that still makes me wonder why Canada makes it so difficult for foreign trained doctors and nurses to be able to practice in Canada. I actually would think that they would have been happy to have foreign trained doctors join the workforce as soon as possible. But then, what do I know? Now, I must say this: Canada is a great country, no doubt. I love this country and I am very grateful to be here. Canada is way better than my home country. So I do not even have much to complain about. I feel safer here. I feel more secure. And I actually understand that Canada is not heaven. And as like any other country, it is not perfect. But I came here with high expectations. And I know that many of you still planning to come, or maybe even already here, have high expectations as well. So if things are not working as well as we think they should, or how we dreamed it would be, it's not that surprising that people are asking themselves if it is even worth moving to Canada at all. Your immigration to Canada is a personal decision, and this video is not meant to discourage you. This country, Canada, is still way better than the countries of many of us, and we still want to be here. And personally, I think Canada is still one of the safest and the best countries in the world. However, Canada needs to start urgently addressing these issues, or else the once idyllic perception of the country will become more and more detached from reality. If you're a new immigrant or soon to be new immigrant to Canada, you need to manage your expectations and know what your relocation goals are. Stop seeing Canada as the goal. Instead, prioritize the reason why you moved in the first place and keep your eyes on that goal. Make up your mind to succeed, and remember, nothing good comes easy. And personally, I believe that these issues will likely improve very, very soon. I do believe so. Do you believe? I actually hope you do. I put a lot of work into bringing you this information. So if you can leave me a like, a comment, and subscribe if you haven't already done so, you would be making my day. Now, for those who are still planning to come to Canada, I just wanted to let you know that the express entry is still one of the fastest and most ignored paths to relocate to Canada. And this video right here talks about the trends of the express entry and what to expect in 2024. Make sure you check it out. And I'll see you in the next one.